There's an old maxim by renowned Zimbabwean historiographer, Dr. Stanlake Samkanji, that goes as follows. I am a person through other people. My humanity is tied to yours. This saying is closely related to a school of thought known as Ubuntu. No, not that one. According to its Wikipedia entry, this value system centers around the ties that we share with our fellow man. It asserts that society is what forms our humanity, and when put in application, it prioritizes collective prosperity in an appreciation of individual uniqueness. That is to say, Ubuntu teaches us the importance of a healthy society, one that looks out for those participating within it, and one that treats people with love and equality. So, what does any of this hippie shit have to do with the title of this video?
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down!
Cool Mountain is one of 15 courses in Mario 64. It's among the first few stages you're able to enter in Peach's castle, and it's one of the more vertical levels in the game. It contains one of the few slide levels, its red coin mission is probably my favorite out of all the game's courses, and it's the birthplace of many a gamer's intrusive thoughts. But more importantly, the level design and missions of this course are closely tied to themes of both isolation and the impact that a community can have on others. So I want to talk about that today in this video. And if you're sitting there wondering why I made a short essay about Cool Mountain, then clearly you've forgotten who rules this channel, you swine. God, I hope this video performs well. This is going to be the first in a short series of videos where I deconstruct and analyze levels in Mario 64, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you all. So sit back, grab yourself a snack, and let's dig into this. Before we can begin examining the stage critically, we first have to comb through the level's design and contents. The reason is because this sort of deconstructive analysis stems from a literary theory known as death of the author. Obviously, the developers behind the Mario titles go into each of their projects with certain intentions in mind, but ultimately, the execution behind their work will often have to stand on its own. It's because of this why we develop different interpretations of the same piece of media, because we're all coming into them with our own backgrounds, biases, and expectations. The bottom line is that it's important to establish and define the contents of Cool Mountain before we begin applying any interpretations to it. Doing so helps to ensure that some form of objectivity is retained in our analysis. The length of this sort of process really depends on the person performing the exercise. In my case, I developed this methodology by observing YouTubers like Mahler, so it's going to be pretty damn thorough. That being said, I'll try not to take longer than necessary. When you first drop into Cool Mountain, Mario always begins near the top of the summit. If this is your first time entering the level, a text box appears that warns us to watch for ice and suggests that we head first into the nearby cottage. From here, we have a lot of options as to where we can go next. There's a broken bridge to our right, a baby penguin waddling on a small cliff up above, and some other path to our left. But front and center is the aforementioned cottage with a surrounding fence and an open chimney. Outside the cottage, a sign is posted.
Santa Claus isn't the only one who can go down a chimney. Come on in.
Upon jumping into the chimney, we're transported to a space inside the cottage that leads us to a snow-covered slide hovering over an endless black void. A sign nearby welcomes us and gives us instructions on how to control Mario on the slide. There's two ways to reach the end of the track, the longer intended method, and a secret path hidden behind a passable wall. When we exit the cottage, it brings us to the bottom of the mountain where we're greeted with our first power star. If we return back to the cottage on any other mission than the first star, we'll be greeted by a massive penguin who challenges us to a race. If we race him through the entire track and beat him, he'll reward us with our third power star. However, he'll label us as a cheater if we use the shortcut. If this happens, you'll have to re-enter the cottage and challenge him again. After we leave the cottage, there's a few things you're bound to notice. First and foremost is a mama penguin sitting in a pool of freezing water, who exclaims that her child has gone missing. There's also a cannon we can unlock by talking to one of the pink bomb-bombs, as well as a lift that'll take us up to the midsection of the mountain. Finally, there's a bridge suspended over a bottomless hole. If we have Mario wait at the end of the bridge, it'll teleport us back to the top of the mountain. This teleporter is actually two-way, and we can use it at any point to also teleport to the bottom section of the course. Beside the teleporter at the top of the mountain, a sign reads,
Warning, cold crevice below.
If we jump down the broken bridge and follow the slope, it'll take us to a small cliffside containing one of the course's 8 red coins. A bit of a side tangent, but I've always wondered why these teleporters exist in the first place. My initial thought was that they were meant to be reminiscent of the warp pipes from the 2D Mario games. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense considering there are actual warp pipes in Mario 64. Aside from the one that Mario jumps out of in the opening cutscene of the game, there's also the pipes and tiny huge island that Mario can use to transition between the large and small versions of the course. So it just makes me wonder why they chose to hide the warp points in secret locations. If anyone has any sort of theories, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. So what else is up here? The first is one of the two baby penguins. This one actually happens to be the mother penguin's child, whereas the other one at the bottom of the course is some random baby. If you bring the wrong penguin to the mother, she'll point out your mistake and add further that their parents must be worried sick. However, if you manage to take the correct penguin to its mother, she'll reward you with our second power star as a token of her gratitude. Aside from the baby penguin, there's both a long slope that takes us down to the midsection of the mountain, as well as an empty wooden platform. At the moment, there's nothing here. If we make our way down to the midsection of the map, we'll find a snowman's head sitting on a similar wooden platform. It tells Mario that its body has melted away and asks Mario if he's come across any bodies looking for a new head. If we return on the 5th mission to the platform on the top of the mountain, we'll find that a small ball of snow has appeared. It asks Mario if there's any heads in need of a new body, and tells him that it'll follow Mario if he knows where to find one. As we guide the snowball down the slope, it'll collect snow from beneath it and grow in size as it follows Mario. After colliding with the head we talked to before, the two fuse together and then thank Mario by rewarding him with our 5th power star. If we return to the midsection during future visits, we'll find that the snowman is still fully constructed. Beyond that, it's kind of barren over here. Aside from a few trees and enemies sprinkled throughout, there's a bridge with a pair of hopping snowmen, as well as a lift connected to the bottom of the mountain. However, the lift itself resides on the bottom section of the course, so we actually can't use it to traverse down the mountain at first. On a floating platform, we can spot the pink bomb that'll open up the cannon at the bottom of the map if we talk to it. Next to the pink bomb, a sign can be found that reads,
Danger, strong gusts, but the wind makes for a comfy ride.
See, now that's just a flat out lie.
That's some bullshit.
I've died numerous times to these pits while growing up, and not once have those gusts ever broken my fall. Like, the wind is literally only in the space next to the floating island. If you dive anywhere else, you'll just fall to your death. If we use the cannon to shoot across the gap in the bottom of the stage, we'll arrive at what seems to be some sort of obstacle course. This brings us to our 6th power star. Fun fact, by the way, you don't actually have to defeat King Bomb to make use of the cannon in other courses. This only seems to be a prerequisite in Bomb Battlefield, which does call into question why the pink Bombs won't let you use the cannon right away in that level. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Anyways, that about covers our examination of this course. There's just a few loose ends I need to tie up first before we move on. The first is the properties of the snow-covered ground. If you fall or dive into it from a long fall, Mario will get stuck halfway in the snow before pulling himself out. It just goes to show that the developers had a lot of fun breathing life and personality into Mario's animations. The last thing of note is the music in the course. The slide theme doesn't really have any sort of bearing on this analysis as it's used throughout the game. And generally, the same can be said for the main theme of this course, Snow Mountain. What I can say about this track though is that it's a pretty jovial theme that helps reinforce the wintry tone of the level. I'm not quite sure if the percussion I'm hearing is either cymbals or tambourines, but it along with the sleigh bells is a lot to immerse me in the level while I'm going around collecting stars. So that all is admittedly a lot to process. Not all of it is going to come up as I go about analyzing this stage and sharing my thoughts, but I knew it was important to show my work so that anyone can come in and challenge my views if they want to. All the videos in this series are going to be an open discussion, and because I value feedback and engagement, I thought it was important to be transparent while writing this video. With that being said, we're finally ready to perform our analysis. Something that stuck out to me while combing through this level were the major characters in this course, of which there are 3. The reason for this is because they all seem to be missing something, whether it be literally or metaphorically. They're all left to their own devices, and they each seem to be in need of some company. In the case of the mama penguin, her reason is a lot more situational since she's separated from her child. After all, it's normal for a mother to want to find her lost baby. But with the snowman, the excuse he gives is kind of flimsy at best. And to explain why, I need to give some background about this game. While I understand that the painting locations were retconned to be real places in Mario Galaxy 2, we really don't know if that was always the case when Mario 64 was first being developed. In fact, there's strong evidence which more likely suggests that the opposite was true. In a 1996 interview found in the Japanese game guide for Mario 64, Miyamoto and Tezuka go on to admit the levels didn't have a lot of planning or blueprints. The developers were basically just given notes and concept art before they started sculpting terrain to add on to later. Furthermore, Miyamoto flat out admits the levels and enemies were done at the very end of the game's development, and were just haphazardly thrown together. So it's probably fair to say that alternative interpretations for how the paintings work in Mario 64 are completely valid so long as you're only discussing this game in isolation. Simply put, I don't understand how the snowman's body could have melted away in a place like Cool Cool Mountain, especially since we don't know whether the worlds inside the paintings have a normal atmosphere with changing weather patterns. Therefore, I have reason to believe that the snowman could just be lying to Mario. Either he never had a body to begin with, or he's lying about how he lost his previous body. Aside from these two characters, the penguin inside the cottage is also sort of just by himself. While we obviously don't know a whole lot about the guy, you could argue that he may be somewhat of a shut-in. We never really see the penguin leave the cottage at all, but we do know that the penguin has invited other challengers into his cottage before. The evidence for this can be found in the official Mario 64 player guide by Nintendo Power, where it explains that previous challengers got the jump on the penguin before by using the hidden path in the slide. That being said, the credibility of the guidebook is a bit dubious considering it's a secondary source. To be safe, I also cross-referenced the Super Mario Bros. Encyclopedia, a resource that was printed to celebrate the 30-year anniversary of this series. And wait a minute. This book doesn't even mention the penguin in its roster! What the fuck, Nintendo? You remember the snowman and the manta ray? But you forgot my boy Biggie Bird?
Yo, slob! Oh my god! He was getting a blowjob!
I mean, he's technically mentioned in the mission section, but only because it's summarizing the course. God, what a fucking remorse. To make matters worse, the only new thing we learn from this source is that the penguin's a world champion sledder, a certified racehorse. Bro's literally a glorified speedrunner. He's just like me, for real. So given all this information, you can make the argument that the penguin is a bit of a lonely person. And really, you can make that observation for pretty much every character in this stage. The baby penguins are all out wandering on their own, and even the pink bomb is stranded by itself on a small floating island. Hell, even the enemies are pretty spread apart from one another. Although it's debatable whether they're actual inhabitants of this stage, since they could just be stationed there by Bowser to protect the Power Stars. The only real characters who actually go against this theme are the two hopping snowmen on the bridge, though they're basically just a glorified obstacle that Mario has to either pass through or avoid. And while we're on the topic of the small floating island, is there anything of note about the course itself? Well, there's a few. I do find it interesting that the sixth star of the course is just tucked away underneath the midsection of the stage, secluded from the rest of the level. Granted, this more so ties in with themes of exploration than it does loneliness, but you could totally see it that way given everything else we just discussed. In fact, there's quite a few areas in this level that are either tucked away or hidden. Discounting the shortcut in the cottage slide, you've got the aforementioned Cold Crevice, this little nook where you can find the blue coin switch, this corner of the map that has one of the 8 red coins, and even the bridge hanging by itself over a bottomless pit. Though much like the obstacle course, you could also argue that these areas were simply designed to feel either mysterious or precarious. But that does beg the question, how far can we take this interpretation? Well, at its logical extreme, it is worth noting that mountains, along with other locations in fiction such as lone cabins in the woods or barren deserts, are often used as a literary symbol for isolation. So, when you really think about it, it's almost fitting that Nintendo chose a mountain as the location, because it helps reinforce the themes of these characters. Though, given all that we just discussed, something you may be wondering is, where does Mario fit into this? This brings us to our other major theme in this level, community. While this mountain can be seen as a symbol of isolation, it can also serve as a visual metaphor for overcoming adversity. It's because of this why Mario's presence in the level is so important. Now all of a sudden, we have an avatar that we can use to interact with these characters, and through Mario, we're able to help them all in their time of need. We can help the mama penguin reunite with her baby, we can help the snowman find a new body, and we can even spend time with Biggie Bird. And this view is also supported by the game itself. Out of all the painting worlds in Mario 64, Cool Cool Mountain has probably the most amount of positive character interactions. I mean, what other level is there where you talk to and help out more than 2 characters? If you count the pink bombs as a single collective, and discount Koopa the Quicks as he only wants to challenge Mario in order to protect his ego, there's 2 interactions in Bomb Battlefield, debatably 0 in Whomp's Fortress, none in Jolly Roger Bay, none in Big Boo's Haunt, debatably 0 in Hazy Maze Cave, none in Lethal Lava Land, none in Shifting Sand Land, none in Dire Docks, debatably 1 in Snowman's Land, debatably 1 in Tall Mountain, none in Tiny Huge Island, none in TikTok Clock, none in Rainbow Ride, and don't even get me started on Wet Dry World. The truth is that outside of Cool Mountain, you really don't spend a lot of time helping out other characters. Most other levels in this game just involve solving puzzles, finding items, or defeating enemies. It's particularly why I like this stage as much as I do. It's one of the few levels in this game where you feel as though you actually have an impact on the world, and it's very much unique in that regard. Though before we can wrap things up, we do need to ask what other competing interpretations in the Mario 64 community currently exist around Cool Mountain. The first is that there aren't any themes and that I'm reading too deep into all this. The argument for this stance is that the game as a whole has an almost non-existent story beyond saving Peach from Bowser. To put it bluntly, this is a perspective which I just vehemently disagree with. Aside from the fact that Bowser is trying to create his own world through the use of the Power Stars, it also can't be ignored that Cool Mountain is hardly the only stage in this game that has some sort of narrative tied to it. You've got the ongoing civil war in Bomb Battlefield, the Womp Uprising in Womp's Fortress, the mystery of the pyramid in Shifting Sandland, and even the unexplainable sunken town underneath Wet Dry World. While I can agree that these sorts of plot threads aren't common in Mario 64, given that the levels were all made at the last minute, it's not like they just didn't have any sort of concepts for these levels beforehand. As for the other competing interpretations, oh wait, that's the end of our list. No, seriously, that was the only other interpretation I could find online. I dug for hours on Google and YouTube trying to see if there's been any discussions about Cool Mountain, and the community has mostly been focused on producing fan fiction related to the Mario 64 iceberg image. So it appears that I'm the first to actually talk about this level to such an extent. And that's pretty cool. In the end, there's quite a bit that people can take away from Cool Mountain. It showed many of us at a very young age what it's like for others to be alone. And through our time as Mario, it taught us the importance of supporting our community and finding time to be in other people's lives. While this is all pretty surface level stuff, I still think it's impressive that Miyamoto and his team were able to achieve that in 1996, especially when you consider that this was one of the first 3D platformers of its time, and they barely had any time to put together these levels. Mario 64 truly is one of those games that just keeps on giving, and I look forward to sharing more of my thoughts on it in the near future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.